Hey, everybody. New details in the Bahamas Overboard case as we come on the air. In the case of missing 55-year-old mother from Michigan, Lynette Hooker. Authorities in the Bahamas have arrested her husband. He's now a suspect in the case. She's still missing, and her daughter fears the worst.
Like, this was probably pre-planned, if anything. Like, it doesn't seem like just some accident.
Could it have been pre-planned? Is there something sinister at foot here? Well, the 55-year-old was reported missing nearly a week ago on Saturday, on April 4th, by her husband, who said that she reportedly fell overboard. When I was researching this case, I found some videos, and some of them show that they definitely know what they're doing on the water. And then there was one that I'm going to show you. It was a little bit strange.
Day 2 of crossing the Gulf of Mexico.
We are crossing the Gulf of Mexico.
And Brian found the speaker. Do the foghorn.
I will do the foghorn.
Won't roll it. That's an exhausted captain.
But a live one.
Isn't that strange? And now his wife is missing, and we're learning that there are details of past domestic violence, at least by court records and what's been reported out there. Isn't that a strange thing to say? Let's listen to it again.
Won't roll it. That's an exhausted captain.
But a live one.
So what does a search effort look like in the Bahamas? What does an investigation look like? I brought in an expert to talk about it.
From an initial perspective, those investigators are going to be picking apart his statements to them, his media statements, and what he gave to them in that interview with a fine-tooth comb to poke and prod for any inconsistencies or any things that just don't pass the sniff test.
That's Brian Fitzgibbons. He sheds light on what it's like to search for a person overseas, in this case, the Bahamas, and what an investigation might look like into criminal charges. But first, thanks for being here. I'm Matt Johnson, your host of True Crime and Justice with Matt Johnson. Please hit the like, subscribe, and maybe share this episode with a friend. Let's bring that true crime family back together. Now the case of missing mother, Lynette Hooker. We have a very special guest joining the conversation with all of this, Director of Operations, USPA National Security and Investigations, leading a team, folks, of investigators focusing on missing persons cases, both domestic and abroad. Perfect person to talk to about this. Brian and his team have worked extensively across the U.S. and internationally. He's also a U.S. Marine. Thank you for joining in the discussion about this Brian Hooker case there in the Bahamas.
Thank you, Matt. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so this is very interesting. I've covered a couple cases there in the Bahamas, including the Shiver case. I know how things don't quite work the same as the U.S. And when we're talking about, just first off, the factor that this is a missing persons case at this point in time, Lynette Hooker, she went missing. She fell off the boat, allegedly. What goes into the search effort for an American overseas?
Yeah, so I think in an immediate sense, the same effort went in for, whether it was a Bahamian or an American, the Royal Bahamian Police Force and Defense Force, along with some volunteer search and rescue organizations, once they were alerted to this, organized and conducted a grid search, both, by vessel on the water and with aerial assets, as well as on the shore. So they're the ones with the most knowledge of the tide flow, the currents, where she allegedly fell overboard and where she would have drifted to. So they immediately conducted this search. And by the way, I'll mention, I believe there were some U.S. Coast Guard air assets that were involved in that search as well. So that initial grid search happened that next day. Her husband, Brian Hooker, arrived to Marsh Harbor Boatyard, advised that she was missing. And then that search would have been organized that morning and conducted that day.
What added difficulties do we have in finding her since we have such a large body of water involved in this investigation?
Yeah, hey, tremendously difficult, right? You got water everywhere, number one. Number two, some pretty good currents going in and out of that bay. So every hour that goes by, and in this case, it was nearly 9 hours after she allegedly fell overboard that authorities were even made aware of this emergency. So with every hour that goes by, that grid expands and expands and expands for where you'd potentially need to search. So water alone, very difficult. Water plus time, and in this case, quite a bit of time, makes this exponentially harder.
It probably really helps, though, that the Americans are involved in the search and recovery.
Yeah, I don't know to what extent the U.S. Coast Guard has been involved in the actual search component of this, and I can say unequivocally, there's no service better in the world than the U.S. Coast Guard at searching for and finding missing people at sea. So it definitely helps to whatever extent they're involved. That involvement helps. I think at this point of the case, they will be involved more from an investigative standpoint to investigate what happened and is there any criminal culpability on the part of her husband, Brian Hooker.
Yeah, what do you suspect is being done right now in the terms of the investigation? It's kind of twofold, right? So there's charges, there's pending charges, he's being held, whatever status that is at right now. So there's that investigation, but then there's also the search for her because she's still missing.
Yeah, so first and foremost, Brian Hooker has been interviewed now multiple times by the Royal Bahamian Police Force. And one report said that he gave a 3-hour plus interview. So from an initial perspective, those investigators are going to be picking apart his statements to them, his media statements, and what he gave to them in that interview with a fine-tooth comb to poke and prod for any inconsistencies or any things that just don't pass the sniff test, that don't make sense. So there's going to be one prong of that investigation that's solely focused on corroborating or indicting, for lack of a better term, what he said to them.
Yeah, what doesn't add up for you when you look at the facts as they're presented right now? I know we're still learning a lot of information in this case, but what doesn't add up for you? So his story, or at least one of them, was that she fell, and then she also fell with the keys, and he had to paddle back, and that's what prolonged, reporting. But what sticks out to you with all of this?
Yeah, a couple of things right off the bat stuck out to me that, they were taking a 2+ mile trip on this small tender, hard bottom inflatable boat that couldn't be traveling at, it looks like a 2 or 4 horsepower motor on there. They couldn't be traveling at too high rate of a speed. So that trip would have taken quite some time to get back to their sailboat. And I'll also add that they've been at sea for quite some time. So they're not novices when it comes to being on the water.
Day 2 of crossing the Gulf of Mexico.
We are crossing the Gulf of Mexico.
And Brian found the speaker. Do the foghorn.
I will do the foghorn.
So hearing that the conditions were so bad, why would they get on the boat in the first place? That stuck out to me. The second piece is...
Do you think that she was told to get on the boat by him?
I think at this point, we don't really have any indication of, in what state they entered that boat and that made that trip. What we do have, though, is Lynette's daughter has made some pretty substantial claims that there was a long history of domestic violence between the two of them. Some of this has been borne out in court records, but some of the allegations have not. So, it painted a picture that there could be a history of violence between the two of them, and that, you add in drinking and alcohol, that there could have been some kind of violent interaction.
Do you think that Brian is going to be allowed to leave?
So, according to Bahamian law, they can hold him for 48 hours, which, based on his arrest, and that would be tonight, the 10th, that clock would be kind of expiring, where he'd have to be formally charged or released. Now, they do have the ability to request through the magistrate an extension to extend that for 96 hours, which would bring it out to April 12th. I have to believe that if they don't have enough to charge him at this point, that they will extend that to the max extent possible. They definitely made that arrest for a reason. The Royal Bahamian Police Force did release a statement that they they detained him due to probable cause. So they did use those words. So we'll see how this bears out, but the clock is certainly on, from that perspective.
And the clock, unfortunately, is certainly on in terms of a safe recovery of her. Let's hope that there's some sort of possibility of her being alive somewhere. Yeah, I mean, hey, it's certainly my prayers go to Lynette and her family, and certainly do pray for a safe recovery. I think, unfortunately, with the nature of this being lost at sea for this long, very rarely results in a safe recovery. But we do hope that that there is hope to be held out here. But I think the more realistic hope is that we could recover her body at least and work to get some answers here. What are you watching for next? What are you listening for?
I think there are a few things. So we talked about one stream of this investigation is going to be focused on the statements that Brian Hooker has given. A second one is going to be about their pattern of life and the last day that they were on shore there in Elbow Cay, right? Are there witness statements from the restaurant they were at? Is there surveillance video? Is there a bartender, a waitress who's able to tell authorities about their interactions that night and their state of intoxication when they left the bar? So, particularly for Brian, are we able to ascertain that? And then the next thing that I think we'll be looking for is there any physical evidence recovered from their sailboat or from that dinghy? Those are two big pieces of evidence that are yet to be determined.
Yeah, I had wondered about that too. I know that she had the keys, but those radios typically still work if you want to use them. So I wondered about that as well. You know what, my friend, Brian Fitzgibbons, you're always spending time with Nancy Grace and Joe Waldman. It's been a pleasure to be on with you, and I hope that you come back. Take care.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
55-year-old Lynette Hooker was reported missing on April 4th by her husband in the Bahamas. Again, she reportedly fell off her boat, her dinghy that she was on at the time. Hasn't been seen since. Anyone with any information is encouraged to call police if you saw something, if you know something. And also, the family, the daughter, Carly, has set up this GoFundMe page. Here's a screenshot of it. She is hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. If you can, I'll have a link in my show notes below. In the meantime, let's keep the family in our thoughts and our prayers. I'll keep you updated on this story as it develops, and we'll see you next time.